I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
So, storytelling. Let's see. Could try with some truck driver stories. Let's go with the St. Christopher necklace. A long time ago, before I started driving over the road, I was going to be moving from Connecticut down to Florida. My family is originally from Florida. My mom heard about me. We were going to be possibly buying a motorcycle, me and my ex-wife. And when she heard me talking about buying a motorcycle, she sent me a necklace that was a St. Christopher pendant. And I guess he's the patron saint of travelers. So that was the whole premise, was that, you know, I could wear that and be hopefully safe in my travels on a motorcycle. Fast forward a long time, and it went 10, 15 years that I was still wearing this necklace, and I was driving truck. We were doing a team thing. We were coming back from like Vegas or Phoenix and heading to Knoxville, Tennessee. Somewhere in Texas, it was like just outside of Amarillo. I was coming across I-40. You know, as I'm driving the truck, I could see this big black spot go underneath the truck. I just assumed it was probably like markings in the road from some kind of construction or work that they had done. At one point, and this is where it gets crazy, this is where you're going to think I'm weird, but keep in mind, I was like really tired, was driving in the middle of the night. It was dark. So it's a good possibility. Could have been tired enough to imagine some stuff, or my mind was playing tricks on me. But anyway, at one point, one of those black spots in the road had kind of like come up from the road and formed into a guy on a motorcycle. And he was in front of me, and I was about to hit him is what it looked like. And I could see him looking up at me, like, you know, kind of backwards like that. And I could see like the terror or the fear in his eyes and his whole face, his whole demeanor, like I was about to run this guy over. And it kind of scared me, you know, and then just out of nowhere, that image just dissipated and there was nothing. And then all of a sudden I felt like this pressure on my chest, you know, it was like something was like pressing me into the seat, and I really couldn't figure out what it was. And it was just like, oh, and I did have my seatbelt on. I drove like that for a good 5 minutes or so. And about this time, the sun was starting to come up. And as the sun was coming up, I started looking in my mirror, and now, you know, with the sun coming up a little, it's still kind of dark, but I'm starting to be able to see the road really well, you know, a lot better, and I can make things out. And I look in the mirror down the side of the trailer towards the back of the trailer, and there's just smoke like billowing out of the back of my trailer. Like, I can't tell if it's coming from underneath or where it's coming from. And it kind of freaked me out, you know, so I turned down the radio, rolled down the window, and now I can hear tires squealing. And I'm like, my brakes are locked up on the trailer. And the funny thing is I was empty. And typically when you're empty, the trailer is light. And if you start skidding the tires, sometimes you can jackknife, you know, the trailer come around beside you. And it didn't. It was just, I was just going right straight down the road, 70 miles an hour with the cruise control set, and the tires were locked up. So I pull off the side of the road. At that point, that's when I realized that pressure that I felt was the brakes tugging on the truck, and I could feel the pressure on my seatbelt. So I pull over, and now that I'm stopped, the smoke kind of clears, and I can see down the highway. I left black marks as far as I could see from the tires skidding. So I get out and I go back and I'm checking it all out, and the brakes locked up because the air line that feeds the air supply to the rear, the brakes on the trailer tires, trailer axles, whatever you want to call it, that line had come off from where it was connected to feed the air to the brakes. But that airline was one of those, they had started making these airlines that were like hard plastic, and there was a blue and a red. The red was your emergency brake and the blue was your service brake. And the red one had come out of, they put them together with like compression fittings, little brass rings, and then when they compress them, those don't come off. Like they just don't. They're tightened up onto the hose, and they are basically dug in a little to the hose, and they don't come out. So the only thing that could have made that come off of that connection was if the line had broke, like if it was cracked or ripped or something like that. And I crawled underneath there and I inspected the airline, and none of the above was the case. Like it was clean and brand new. Like it just came out of the fitting with no marks. Like it didn't even hurt the hose. So that was really confusing. I called like the roadside, assistance. We worked at the time for Ryder, and there was just a number on the window. You could just call that number and they'd send somebody out. So they send somebody out. The mechanic comes, he's looking at it, and he brings me back there, and he says, he's talking about the hose, the line, how it's not broke, it's not cracked, it's not ripped, there's no marks, and he couldn't understand that. He was like, I don't understand. I said, that's exactly what I thought. But in the process, he noticed that the driver's side axle, well, both axles of the trailer, the spindle on the end of the axle had snapped, had broke, and by all intensive purposes, the way he explained it to me, my trailer tires, both of them, should have come off. And if they'd have come off, the trailer would have tipped, leaned over to one side, and more than likely I would have been in an accident. So he calls a tow truck, and a tow truck comes and brings us back to a Ryder shop, and they fix us, and away we go on our way back heading to Knoxville. And I guess the moral of the story is that I had that St. Christopher necklace on, and all I could think of at the time was, and I'm not a real religious person, but all I could think of was that those axles had snapped. The spindles on the end of the axles had snapped. The tires should have, the wheels and all, rims and everything should have come off, but they didn't. And because I didn't know about it, the only way that I found out about it was that brake line coming out and causing that pressure, which made me listen and roll. All these things kind of culminated to the end result, which was me pulling over and realizing that I needed to be towed. I couldn't drive any further because we would have probably wrecked. So I always attributed that to that necklace. Fast forward a little ways, I'm, like I said, not a hugely religious person. I'm more of an agnostic person. I don't really believe or disbelieve. It's just kind of a thing. But I still believe in something. I just don't know what. And I also believe in like the universe. I think that because of that necklace, or because I instilled belief into that necklace that it was protecting me, the universe let me know that there was an issue that night, and that's pretty much what saved us. And then we were riding teams, and I kept saying us. There was a guy sleeping in the sleeper while I was driving. So if something would have happened, we both could have been injured or killed. So that was a pretty unique story. I don't know what else to add to that one. I used to see a lot of accidents, a lot of bad accidents. A lot of the things that I've experienced with other drivers have put me in a position today where I don't really like driving on the interstate, period, because people drive really reckless, really carelessly, really fast. And I mean, I'm not saying nothing. I have a heavy foot. I have a tendency, if the speed limit's 65, I'm usually doing 70 to 72, close to 75. And with that in mind, there's a lot of people on the highway that will pass me like I was sitting there standing still. And zipping in, cutting people off, cutting in front of you, behind you, just craziness. And then so any chance I have that I don't need to go on the highway and I can take back roads, I'm going to take back roads, because I get really nervous. I'm not too nervous that I can't do it. If I don't have to be on the interstate, I'm not going to be. There was another occasion where I had almost gotten to an accident. I had delivered, I can't remember what kind of boats it was. It was either pontoon boats or John boats. And I had delivered them up in Canada. And then after Canada, I had to go down to Bucyrus, Ohio, to, I think it was a Baja boat plant. And as I was traveling down there, it was like right before Thanksgiving. It was, snowy highway, and we were on a section of highway that was elevated. It wasn't, I don't remember it being a bridge per se, because it was a long stretch that was just elevated. It's like a bridge. There's no ground underneath it. So those sections of highway like that tend to freeze really easy because there's cold air running underneath them. At one point, we were on a little stretch, and we were only doing probably 30, maybe 25 to 35 tops. And there was what the heck was it? A Volkswagen pickup truck in front of me with a Chevy Trailblazer in front of him or it. And the two of them started getting into trouble. You could see them slipping and sliding. Eventually they collided. Now, when this all happened, it felt like slow motion. And those two collided, and I was about to run into them because I don't want to hit my brakes really hard, because when you're on ice or slippery, cold surfaces, if you hit your brakes too much, you end up sliding. Everybody wants to stab those brakes or slam on them when something happens, when the reality is just take your foot off the fuel and kind of like let things ride out a little bit before you go hitting the brake, but you do have to do it. You do have to slow down at some point. You've got to figure out what's a good pressure to apply to the brakes so that I don't start sliding. I didn't have a choice but to start hitting mine because the people in front of me were hitting theirs, and then they got into an accident. I started hitting mine, and I was trying to do it nice and easy, and I was empty, so my trailer was light, and I ended up in a jackknife position where this is your truck, where your trailer ends up coming around to the side. And it was so far around to the side that when I looked out my window, I could almost see the hubs of the trailer axles. And you normally won't be able to see those because it's back behind you. Now it's all the way out to the side of me. So I had to make a decision because I'm jackknifing and I'm about to just clothesline these two vehicles in front of me. So one way that you can get out of a jackknife is if you're able to accelerate. And if you can accelerate, you can pull your trailer back behind you by going faster than the trailer is. That's the idea. You can accelerate, or you can apply just the trailer brakes with the trolley and pull that back. Well, I didn't want to do that because I'm on a slippery surface, because if I would have just tried to do that, it just would have slid more. So I chose to hit the fuel, and I also had to make a decision on whether I was going to hit and possibly hurt or kill two people because there was two cars, or I could steer to my right, hit the fuel, steer to my right, and hit one person. There was a guy in a pickup truck next to me, and I chose to hit this one person. If the two of us, if I hit him and we go off the highway, we could probably make do because we weren't going really fast. If my trailer clotheslined these other two people, I don't think they had much of a chance of surviving that. So I chose to hit this guy. Well, when I went to the right and hit the fuel, it was like this guy was his thoughts were linked to mine, because he literally, as I turned to the right, he turned to the right, and we both kind of went down off the shoulder of the road into the snow, and we both came back up. We avoided the accident, and because I hit the fuel, my trailer had straightened back out, and we avoided completely having any sort of accident, any sort of incident or collision between each other and those other two people. And that was pretty amazing. Just amazing to me that this guy did the exact same thing that I did, and we both avoided it. The result was we didn't get into an accident, and I could not stay on the highway. I was so nervous and so afraid that I was going to get into another accident, or not another one, but I was just nervous. My knees were shaking uncontrollably, and I got off the highway, found a truck stop, got a coffee, and then I took back roads, I want to say for the next 2 or 3 hours, to get to my destination, because I did not want to get back on the highway. I actually drove on back roads that hadn't been plowed yet. I was probably at one point driving in 8 inches of unplowed snow down a road, but I had traction, it was quiet, and I was kind of by myself. So I didn't mind the fact that I had to drive through some of the snow. As long as you kept a good momentum going, you kept moving. It didn't stop you. You didn't slide off the road, as long as you didn't jerk the wheel too much. And I managed to drive a couple hours like that and make it to my destination. So there's a few for tonight. And yeah, there you have it. There's just some stories from the highway.
I came from the mud.